Hello, I'm Matthew Traynor, Chief Executive of Oxleas. Welcome to the latest edition of Oxwide, our fortnightly news show. We're here in the garden at Pinewood House, with all of us here trying to beat the August heat. Although we're in the school summer holidays, it's not a typical year, is it? And it's been interesting to notice that CQC, our regulators, have been at Oxleas a couple of times over the last couple of weeks. They carried out an unannounced inspection at Eltham Community Beds just a week or so ago, and they've also been speaking to a number of our community mental health team colleagues across the Trust and to more than 80 of our service users in community mental health to help inform the quality of our care or their judgment on that. We did find out today as well that they've given us full assurance for the way we've managed infection prevention and control during the COVID-19 pandemic, so very many congratulations to our infection prevention and control team. They've done a tremendous job trying to support colleagues, respond to national guidance and keep us safe, and CQC have told us some of the things that we've done here at Oxleas are going to be used as examples of best practice across the region. So congratulations and well done to all of those teams. And although it is August, it's been a busy time. We'll hear today from our bed management team about the pressures they're managing, and we'll hear from our forensic colleagues about how they're bringing in new systems, e-observations, to try to improve the way in which we manage people safely in our inpatient services. So there's a lot to find out about here today in Oxwide. Our first piece today is about building a fairer Oxleas. We know that when people feel as though they're treated fairly at work, that they're happier and that happier staff deliver better quality of services. And it's very important to me and to the executive team and board that we tackle head on some of the concerns that have come through this year from a range of our staff about whether they feel they are treated fairly, both in terms of how their own professional role or their career is managed, also how they're able to seize opportunities to move on and develop as individuals within the Trust. We're starting our work on fairness by focusing on the experiences of our BAME staff. I wrote to all staff earlier this year about Black Lives Matter and the importance of us recognising what the experience of COVID has meant to so many of our colleagues. And earlier this week, Clare Evans, our Director of Strategy and People, caught up with Dr. Okocha, our Medical Director and Deputy Chief Exec, and Trotter, our Chair, to talk about some of the work we've done so far.
Hello everyone, I'm Clare Evans and I'm the Director of Strategy and People at Oxleas, and I'm joined today by Trotter, our Chair, and Dr. Okocha, our Deputy Chief Executive, to talk about the work that we've started recently about building a fairer Oxleas. I wonder if we can start with you, Iffy. Can you explain a little bit about why we've started this work?
Hello everyone, and thank you, Rachel, for the introductions and for the question. So some of this work was already underway, not just in Oxleas, but right across the NHS. And what we've decided to do is to increase the pace and the focus of the work through this program. And I think the catalyst for doing this now are fairly obvious, but it would help to just rehearse them again. So the COVID-19 pandemic that disproportionately affected BAME groups was a real factor. I think that one of the things that the pandemic showed was that the inequity and inequalities in our society may have contributed hugely to that disproportionate impact. I think also that the really, really tragic death of George Floyd in the USA that then had a real ripple effect right across the world and resulted in the Black Lives Matter movement yet again also contributed. Our Oxleas data does show that some of our staff have poor experience of working in Oxleas, no different from the rest of the NHS, I must add. And so in beginning this work, what we really want to do is to make Oxleas a great place for people to come and work. We want the organization we want to improve fairness in Oxleas and make it a really inclusive place where everyone has a positive experience. Because the evidence is very clear that organizations where people feel that they're fairly treated, they're included, they're happy and they're valued, inevitably provide better care. And this is what we want to do in Oxleas. We want to attract people of diverse backgrounds, we want to retain them, and we want to grow their talent. And I hope that this work over time will get us to that position.
Ify, thank you. That's really clear. Andy, from your perspective and the board, why is this work important to you?
Well, it's very important indeed, and not just from the perspective of a board. It's as a human being, as a member of the NHS, as a part of the Oxleas family. I mean, it's enormously important that Oxleas is an attractive, safe place to work, that we can recruit and retain and develop our staff, and hopefully where our staff have a sense of belonging and where they feel cared for. It's enormously important to me personally that we look after everybody that works at Oxleas and to hear what they have to say and to react to their concerns and to do something about it.
Thanks. So there was a meeting on Tuesday of this week, Ify, that you're the chair of, the Action Plan Group meeting. Can you tell us a little bit about that meeting, what it was about, who attended it?
So the Action Plan Group brought together a really diverse group of staff from across all of Oxleas, and I really do mean right across Oxleas, to share experiences and think together about how we go forward. So I was really quite delighted that we have had about 37, probably more, but certainly 37 members of staff who volunteered to be part of this group, who shared their experiences weeks in advance of the meeting. We had the BAME leadership who also had gathered views of members and attended the meeting. We had senior BAME staff who had been chairing virtual meetings right from the height of the pandemic and through to now, who also joined. We had executive directors. We had the chair, Andy, who attended, and a number of non-executive directors. And I think that really gave it a good sense of how important everyone thinks of this work and people's determination and willingness to work together to see things improve. And in terms of the focus of the meeting, we essentially wanted to do two things, and I think we succeeded in doing those two things. The first was to listen to the experiences of people, to listen and hear about our own Oxleas data, to try and understand what it must feel like for staff who were sharing their experiences. And then the second thing was to then agree from a long list of priorities what we were going to focus on.
Thank you. And I was at that meeting and I've read the papers for that meeting, and there was some reading before that meeting that set out the experiences of some of our BME staff, many of our BME staff. And I know from my own perspective, it was very powerful reading and it was very uncomfortable reading as a member of the board. And I just wondered, Andy, what your reflections were, having both read and listened to those experiences.
Well, it was, as you rightly say, Rachel, it was powerful and it was very moving. I had a sense of sadness that some of our staff were feeling as they are feeling. Real concern that these things are happening on my watch. I've been chair here now for 4 years. This has always been a very important issue for me personally, and I know for the board, but nevertheless, this is happening and still happening. And so there's a real sense of concern, a real sense of determination to do something practical about this. I discussed this with colleagues from the board yesterday, from non-exec directors, and we all share that concern. That we really have got to do practical things about this, not just talk about strategies, not just big wide plans. We've got to do things that are actually going to make a difference to people's lives, and there's absolute determination that we'll do that. Thanks,
Andy. And if your reflections after that meeting?
Well, I share everything that Andy has mentioned. The meeting was really quite touching. You'll recall we heard from one particular colleague who was moved to tears, and many of us were moved to tears as she shared her own experience. And in some respects, you almost cannot believe that this is happening in the same organization that we all work, given how we want to see people grow in the organization and feel as though we're a family, But I think for me, what that did was made me more determined to pursue this path that we're on. And I recognize that this is not an action plan that you put in place for 3 months or 6 months or whatever, but we're on a journey And I think we really want to make sure that we stay focused on this and that we continue to receive feedback from those staff and many more to then tell us if we're doing things differently and if things are getting better for them.
Absolutely. So you're the chair of an action plan group. Do we yet have a plan of action and what we're going to focus on?
Well, just the way you ask the question makes me a bit nervous, because there's always a feeling that as a chair, indeed, as Andy said, that he cannot believe that as a chair of the organization for 4 years and this is happening. You feel as if being the chair, something needs to happen. Yes, of course, we came out with a number of great ideas. There were 7 or so key areas that staff were keen for us to work on. Some of these overlap with what we're required to do as part of the NHS under the REST Workforce Grace Equality agenda. But there were 2 key things that colleagues thought were absolute priorities that they really want us to focus on. The first being a fair and transparent recruitment process. And I think we can tackle that and we need to give that all of our energy. And the second being improving cultural understanding. And that too, we think we need to understand, because I think only through that, with the diversity and what it means and what we can gain from the diversity in the trust, really coming to its own.
Thank you so much, Iffy. And I know that as part of that work, our plan is to, whilst these areas for action have been driven by the improvements that our BME staff want to see, we also want to engage everybody in making this a fairer Oxleas for absolutely everyone. So I know that we're going to be going out and really getting everybody engaged in that agenda. But perhaps if I could both ask you as your last question, if you were to look forward 9 months and this work had been really going, what are your aspirations for where we will be in the future in Oxleas in relation to this agenda?
Well, from my perspective, I'm looking for some concrete actions. One of the great concerns has been about selection process, promotion, development. We can deal with this. We can make this better. We can make it transparent. We can make sure that people know exactly what the opportunities are. We can help, we can mentor, we can develop. These are practical things that we can do, and we can be judged by those things. And I think that's eminently achievable in a relatively short space of time.
Andy, thank you. Iffy, any last words from you?
Completely agree with that. Wouldn't want to add or take away anything from that at all. The additional thing, of course, is that we talk more about our diversity and we share our diversity.
Thank you both very much. It sounds as though we have a great platform for driving improvements for the future that the board is really behind. Iffy, Andy, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you.
If you'd like to get involved in the work to improve our recruitment and progression processes or to build cultural understanding in Oxleas, please contact Karen Edmonds at nhs.net or rachel.clare.evans at nhs.net. We want as many people as possible to get involved in this improvement work, whatever your race, ethnicity, sexuality, sexual identity, disability, lived experience of mental health issues, age, gender or background. So please get in touch. Together, we will build a fairer Oxleas for everyone.
Thank you to Rachel, Iffy and Andy there. There'll be a lot more to come on this, so make sure you look out for the Ox and future editions of Oxwide to find out what we're doing about this. The culture of the organisation is one of the most important things. Also very important though is making sure that people who work for us have the right tools to do their jobs. And we're going to go over now to Joydens Ward at the Bracton Centre to find out more about EObs, our e-observations programme. And this is allowing clinical staff to carry out digital observations linked directly into Rio. So we've got a much more contemporary system for monitoring the health of the people we care for. Over now to Keith Soper, who's been talking to colleagues at Joydens to find out how it's going.
Hi, I'm here at the Bracton Centre today to talk about the rollout of the EObs system. First, I talked to Jeff, the ward manager on Joydens Clinic, about the introduction of the system, which went live this week.
The system is a module on either a mini iPad or an iPod. So the member of staff can go and do their therapeutic observations engagement level with the patient, and they record it on a module and it straight away uploads onto Rio. I think we have a group of staff here that are quite keen to use technology as part of their daily work, so they're quite excited on using.
And what have you said to patients about staff walking around with electronic devices?
So before we introduced it as EObs, we've had the iPads on the ward for several months now, using it in as therapies. So the OTs were using it to do some OT works, listening to music. So we've had iPads on the ward for several months. We've got posters on the wards to let them know that their observations are now being recorded on iPads, so staff are walking around with iPods and iPads to engage with them.
What made you want to get involved with your patients? Because we're the first ward to go live with these modules.
I guess again it's the team's keenness in moving forward with technology. We all know, especially with COVID, we were pushed to our limits in using technology to do meetings. And for Joydens, we've run psychotherapy groups, assessments, etc., using technology.
I think it's interesting because one might not normally associate the use of mobile technology within a secure setting. And so for us to be leading the way with rolling out EObs, I think it's a really positive thing.
So it's been over a year now that we've been discussing EObs. Recently, obviously there was a bit of a halt due to COVID, but we've managed to pick that up through virtual meetings. There has been a good collaborative approach across all NDTs and all directorates, everyone kind of inputting their thoughts on how this module should look like and how it will benefit, how the system will benefit all the wards across the trust. So for me, engaging in those meetings and being able to put my views across, I've got some backgrounds in acutes and forensics, so I think for me it was I was a key person to start it here, since I had the background of acute and forensics. At the last minute, as always with some technologies, you do get some glitches, but I think we've managed to rapidly sort these things out for us to get started, and the system's running smoothly now. So, but I'm sure there'll be some learning from it moving forward.
I also spoke to Sue from Clinical Transformation about the programme and what the next steps are.
One of the key benefits is that as soon as the observation's taken, the information is in Rio, and that can be seen by anybody in any place. So whether it's somebody on the ward or the modern matron, the information's there straight away. It will help us when we're thinking about discharge planning. It gives us access to data that we haven't had previously because it was always recorded on paper. And talking of paper, there is a huge amount of paper that's used currently for observations, and obviously that has to be scanned into Rio, and that won't need to happen any longer. So good for the planet as well, which is a great thing. Joydens is the first ward that's gone live, and we have a programme now to roll out across the rest of the trust with the forensic directorate first. So we're going to Danson next in a couple of weeks, and then we will go all through the services with therapeutic obs, and alongside that we'll be starting to look at what other observations we can start to capture. So things like food and fluid charts, or other information that's currently collected on paper in the ward. So those things will be running in tandem over the next 6 to 9 months.
Thanks very much for your time today, Sue, and good luck with the rest of the programme.
Thanks, Keith.
Thanks there to Jeff, Sue and Keith for that update on EObs. It's a really exciting project that will be rolling out across the whole trust in our inpatient wards in the months to come. I've got the bed management team here with me in a very hot Pinewood back garden, and they've managed to take a break from their extremely busy day. And I'm joined by Lynn Mackenzie, Patient Flow Coordinator. So Lynn, tell me what the bed management team does.
The bed management team is now named the Crisis Hub, and what we do is we find out how many empty beds we have, where the vacancies are, where the clients are waiting for beds. They can come in from all sources, ED, other areas, police stations, and then we identify who needs beds on priority, risk, what's best for the client. Then we just check around all the wards and make sure that the discharges are all in place so that we can allocate beds. And then hopefully without sending too many people out of area, we try to admit as many locally as we can.
What are some of the things you're weighing up when you're trying to find the right place for a patient, Lynn?
Section history, forensic, level of need for a bed, which will identify where the beds can, the clients can be placed in the beds that are appropriate. It can be a challenge, especially when you've got maybe 3 or 4. You have informal admissions, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're any more unwell than someone on section. It's just that the section patient maybe doesn't realise they're as unwell as they are. Challenges for beds is obviously demand. We've got a high demand for beds at the moment. I'm not sure whether COVID-19 has contributed to that. I think that's challenge-wise. I say it is demand.
I mean, it's always difficult, isn't it, when we have to send people a long way from home to find them the right place to stay. I mean, that's always a hard thing. It's
really difficult, and it's something that I will always try and avoid. We have got certain providers that are nearer as opposed to further, so I will always advocate for something that's a lot nearer the client, a demographic area. But sadly, sometimes we just can't provide a local service, Matthew, and we just do have to send people out.
Do you find it? I mean, I've walked out of here quite late at night, and sometimes you and the team are still in there working the phones, trying to sort people out. How do you find it trying to switch off?
I am quite lucky. I can go home, shout at John, and tell him what a terrible day I've had, and he goes, "Okay, mate, let's have our dinner and go and watch a bit of telly." So I do cut off.
Yeah.
I have to.
It's important, isn't it, to get that balance right?
Yeah.
And we've been joined now by Miranda, another member of the bed management team. Miranda, this has been a really interesting year, quite a difficult year. Tell me a bit about your experiences in 2020.
As you're well aware, due to the pandemic, it's been quite a challenge, during this year. In terms of bed management, we've had quite a couple of requests for patients that needed shielding. And because Green Park's house has more en-suite rooms, so we've had to accommodate for quite a number of them. And in terms of the patients being screened on admission, it appears that it's been a challenge as well, following assessment. But I must admit, despite all this, it's worked really well. It's been great team effort, and we've had to accommodate for our patients' needs and, meet, service user needs.
And sometimes you learn the most about working with your colleagues when things get really tough, don't you? And it always feels to me as though you're a team that really looks after each other.
Yes, that's very right, because we've had to tap into each other's, knowledge, really, in terms of consultants liaising with each other, and us as, bed managers and, patient flow team, as we are now called, So it's been great, actually, I must admit. Like you say, despite the challenges, it's actually enabled us to identify our strengths, which I think worked really well.
Yeah. That's good. And as a team, of course, last year you won the Corporate Services Recognition Award. I think I was one of the judges, and I think it was unanimous in the discussion. So what was it like as a team to get that award?
Oh, we were thrilled, weren't we?
Yeah,
we were actually really chuffed to be nominated.
Yeah.
And then when we won, that was wow, wasn't it? It was like, wow.
Yeah.
And we'd had some stiff competition, so I was proud of us.
We didn't expect it. So it was very encouraging. I found it very encouraging to actually, acknowledge that what we're doing has actually been, acknowledged really recognized by the trust. So I think, that was very nice, Yeah.
We were thrilled.
Good. I'm glad, and we look forward to seeing who comes forward for it this year. Thanks so much for joining me. Let's get into some shade shortly, I think, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Matthew.
It's great to hear about the impact of the recognition awards, and on that subject, we're now taking nominations for this year's awards for Team of the Year, for the Governor's Award, and Health and Wellbeing Champion. and you have until 31st of August to get your nominations in, and details can be found on the Ox. There's information on the screen now that will tell you where to go, so do make sure you nominate those teams and colleagues that have worked so hard this year in tremendously difficult circumstances. Also coming up are our governor elections, and we're looking for people from all walks of life to stand as a governor, whether you're a member of staff, someone who's used our services, or someone who cares for someone who has. Jo Mant caught up with some of our governors to find out why their role is so worthwhile.
Hi, I'm Jo Mant, Head of Stakeholder Engagement. I'm here today to tell you about our upcoming governor elections and also to talk to governor colleagues about their experiences of being a governor. Joining me today are Christine, a staff governor representing Bromley Services, who's stepping down this year, Steve, who's a public governor representing Greenwich, and Janet, who's a public governor representing the rest of England, who's also stepping down this year. As our governor elections are opening on the 14th of August, it's now a good time to hear from existing governors about their experiences. Christine, as a staff member, why did you decide to stand as a staff governor? What motivated you to do that?
So I was looking for a different dimension to my work. Just wanted to explore something really different. And it has proven both interesting and rewarding being a governor. I also wanted to make a contribution to the governing or running of the trust. And obviously offering the viewpoint of staff in that aspect.
Steve and Janet, you've both worked for the Trust previously and have then chosen to come back as public governors. Why did you want to do that? Why do you want to come back as governors?
Throughout my life, I've been involved with various charities and community organisations. And when the opportunity came up to stand as a governor, I thought it would fit in very nicely with my other interests. I had only intended working at Oxleas for 4 weeks and ended up being there for 4 years. However, being a former employee was not a direct reason for me coming back as a governor, other than the fact that I actually missed the place. However, over the years, several members of my wider family have been service users of the Trust, and it was an opportunity for me to give something back on their behalf.
Yes, I think in my background, I've worked in many voluntary organisations, so I have the same background as Steve in that respect. I just came to Oxleas for a short time, and I was there for 13 years, so I did miss it. But because I wanted to give a little bit back, and because I think it's important to be involved in the local community, although I represent the rest of England, I do only live in the borough of Dartford, which is very far away. And I just think it's important for people to represent services that are provided to them and see actually what's going on and have a say.
Steve, you've rejoined the council twice now. What is it about the being on the Council of Governors that's really kept your interest?
Well, I think, first of all, I was very disappointed at not being re-elected after my first spell as a governor, and decided there and then that I would stand again at some point. Fortunately, when I did, I was successful and soon got back into the swing of things, and I met many governors I'd worked with previously, but also many new governors. The governors' meetings cover practically everything involved in running an NHS Foundation Trust. And although there are times when I think I wish there was an off switch, generally speaking, the meetings are very interesting. And as a governor, you are only committed to 4 days a year. Of course, if you want to devote more time, you have the opportunity to attend board meetings and various subcommittees and see in greater detail how the trust runs.
And Christine, has being a governor helped you in your role? And if so, in what way?
Oh, definitely. So I'm employed by Bromley. I work in the Bromley Directorate, but being a governor has made me better informed about what's happening in the trusts. So the presentations from the executive, attendance of board meetings have broadened my horizons. It has also given me an opportunity to attend subcommittees that of interest, especially the quality committee, because that's where the bulk of my role is, working to improve the quality of services. So that has helped me a lot. And also training. So we have access to the government training provided by NHS providers. That has been really, really enlightening and helpful, both in my role as a governor and in my role as head of nursing in Bromley.
Janet, what in your opinion is the best thing about being a governor?
I think the openness of the staff, the directors, to governors, and actually feeling part of the trust. I've found at all stages everybody has been very welcoming to us as volunteers, if you like. So that for me is a standout.
That's really lovely to hear from a sort of corporate standpoint. For all of you, really, have there been any real standout moments while you've been governors so far?
I think probably being invited to sit on a serious incident inquiry. It was fascinating to see how thorough the investigation was, with all staff involved questioned in great detail and recommending changing various practices where it was thought necessary, which eventually resulted in a clear view of what happened and what, if anything, could have been done to change the outcome. It's certainly something I would happily do again in the future.
I think the visit to Wandsworth Prison was probably the standout for me. That's a real eye-opener.
It was. It really was.
What our staff are having to, the conditions our staff are having to work in. It was a real eye-opener.
Yeah, for me, I've enjoyed the training and networking with other governors. That's an experience I wouldn't have had in my role in Bromley.
And Christine, what would you say to anybody thinking about standing as a governor in this year's elections?
Oh, I would encourage them to stand, not for them not to be nervous or anxious about it, because there's great support available. So we do have a formal induction. And as I've mentioned before, there's loads of training to support you. And the governors are very nice, and it's a good network to belong to.
As previously mentioned, the elections are opening on the 14th of August and their closing date is the 14th of September. So do make sure you get your nominations in by that date. Look out for information on the Ox and in your inbox. Information will be coming out very soon. So if you are interested in standing or you want more information, please contact me. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us today.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you to Jo and our governors there, and don't forget you've got until 14th of September to apply. It's a really important role in working with the Trust, holding us to account and making sure that we hear the voice of our staff and our service users. I'd like to say thank you also to everyone who's taken part in this week's edition of Oxwide. If you or your team would like to feature, then do contact us using the details on the Ox. So until next time, goodbye.
Run!
You're on it.
You're on it.